Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture on cultivation analysis. This lecture is a part of your paper on youth, media and society. This lecture will introduce you to the cultivation analysis, its understanding and to study the relationship between violent media content and its perceived effects on the different types of users of media. The lecture will also help in locating the relationship between media consumption and its effect on youth. Cultivation theory of media effect studies basically examined the long-term effects of television content on the behavior of youth and children. The basic proposition of the cultivation theory is that the amount of time spent watching television is directly proportional to the belief in social reality, that is, manufactured reality portrayed on television. The theory propagates that the perception of the world and the ideological messages that are transmitted through television heavily influences the behavior of the audience. The theory was basically targeted at television as a medium of communication that later was adopted by every medium of communication. The theory of cultivation is basically a positivistic approach and is the most popular theories of mass communication research. The idea of cultivation analysis suggests that heavy exposure to television content over a period of time cultivates among its viewers a certain perception of reality. George Gardner drew attention to institutions, messages and public while explaining the cultivation analysis. According to George Gardner, television as a medium of communication has created a universal symbolic environment which is binding diverse communities together and has created a socialized and standardized rules and behaviors. Gardner has given analogy of television with religion and argued that television is similar to modern societies as religion was in earlier societies. The entire research on cultivation analysis mostly focused on heavy consumption of television rather than on specific messages. The cultivation analysis focused mainly on television, but this theory has been applied to several other mediums of communication and on different situations like music, videos, effect of video games, as well as on LGBT, women and sexuality issues. This theory has been extensively used in other areas of research also apart from effects of television. Cultivation analysis, media cultivation theory. The idea of cultivation theory was derived from a large-scale comprehensive project entitled Cultural Indicators by George Gardner and Larry Gross in 1976. The Cultural Indicators project started as a study commissioned by Lyndon Johnson under the National Commission on the Causes and prevention of violence. The basic idea of the commission was to address the issue of violence in American culture. The basic purpose of the commission was to address the issues of the effect of television violence on the viewers. The research project started at Annenberg School of Communication Studies and was followed by the creation of Surgeon General Advisory Committee on Television and Social Behavior in 1972. The methodology adopted for the purpose was content analysis of television that depicted how violence was portrayed in television media. The result of the study found that violence in prime-time television is more as compared to the violence in real world. The project examined the effect of television consumption, and the entire project was free from political and other vested interest. This led to the formation of cultivation theory, and it has been one of the most widely used theories in communication research studies on effects of media. The theory still holds significance and is now being applied to all streams of media and communication studies, be it television, print, new media, and the theory holds its importance today with the increasing use of digital media technologies by young generation. So it becomes very important to measure the effects of the digital boom on young generation. Cultivation theory. The cultivation theory as media effects theory was put forward by George Gerbner and Larry Gross in 1976 in their seminal work titled Living with Television. The cultivation theory was based short-term effects of television on the audience. The authors of the theory proposed that the more time people spend living in the television world, the more likely they are to believe social reality portrayed on television. The theory examined the influences of television content on the cognition, perception, and attitudes of the viewer or the audiences. The cultivation study on television found that the frequent viewers are more vulnerable to the media effects of the television content and start believing that the content is real and valid. George Gerbner coined the term mean world syndrome, which according to him is the belief developed among heavy television viewers that the world is far violent and dangerous than it actually seems. The exposure to excessive violence and crime on television makes a heavy TV viewer to relate it to real world and perceive it as more violent. The cultivation process, according to Gerbner, constitutes two processes: mainstreaming and resonance. The mainstreaming refers to diminishing of lines between groups of heavy television viewers and their persistent exposure to similar content develops a common outlook of social reality of the world around them. The process of resonance makes a heavy television viewer to relate the content depicted on the television to the real life environment. For example, the fear of being killed in a person might intensify by regularly watching movies and shows about killing and violence. The cultivation theory basically assumes the television effects on youth as cognitive and affective. According to the communication researchers, the youth are primary viewers of violence and sexually oriented media content on television. Although the television has proved to be a significant tool for educating young people about science and society, yet it is considered equally powerful for stimulating violent and sexual behavior among youth. Researchers in the field of mass communication have been interested in cultivation process to understand how the perception within youth and conditioned by the influence of television viewership. The youth goes through a process of cognitive developments with different sources of influences which surrounds him. The information on television to which a youth is exposed to influence the behavior and attitude of the youth, and he or she naturally imbibes the perception of the media content. The cultivation theory is based on three core assumptions. Number one, television is different from other forms of mass media. The first and the foremost assumption states that television is a visual medium. So, there is no need for the viewers to be literate and the access to television is limited. But television is the major source of most of the broadly shared images in history, according to Gardner, Gross, and Signorelli. Television cultivates from the childhood predispositions and preferences that was once acquired by the other primary sources. Television, with its repetitive messages, images, helps in creation of common symbolic environment. Television has become the central cultural arm of the society, according to Gardner. Secondly, television shapes the way individuals within the society think and relate to each other. The matter of the consciousness and the realities that are created by television are not based on real facts, but rather on speculations. The major function of television is to stabilize social pattern and to cultivate the resistance to change. Thirdly, the effects of television are limited. The assumption of limited effects states that television is a larger part of socio-cultural system. The effects of watching television could be high or low, but the effects are consistently present all the time. George Gardner argued that watching television causes a particular behavioral change, and also watching television over time creates a perception of world around us. Cultivation theory and perception of violence. The initial work in the evolution of cultivation theory focused on effects of the television violence that is portrayed on television. The major portion of the research on cultivation theory focused on violence. It was concluded that the impact of higher uses of television viewing that Gardner called as heavy viewers has a directly proportional impact on audience. The viewers who spend more and more time watching crime-related and violence-related programs on television are more likely exposed to violence, and it makes a mental picture in the minds of the viewer, and the viewer starts making a judgment that the environment is full of crime and violence, but in reality it could be different. In a survey conducted in 1968, Gardner categorized the viewers of television into three categories as those viewers who watch television less than 2 hours a day as light viewers, and viewers who spend 2 to 4 hours a day on watching television as medium users, whereas those viewers who spend more than 4 hours a day watching television as heavy users. The study concluded that the heavy users of television violence portrayed beliefs and opinions similar to what was portrayed on television instead of what was happening in the real life. The results of the study introduced the notion of mean world syndrome, which was based on the idea that heavy consumption of violent related events on television certainly make the viewer of that content believe that the world is more dangerous and violent, which otherwise may or may not be true. The cultivation theory shows a direct correlation between television viewing and creation of a fear of criminal victimization. The same applies to social networking sites, as the new media is also playing a similar part in the integration of viewers' perception of reality as more and more criminal and violent content on television and on social networking sites. Violent visuals makes it more likely that a heightened sense of fear develops among viewers. The entire discourse on media is depending more and more on sensational coverage of crime and fear and focuses more on violence-related events. The cultivation analysis also suggests that the heavy users of the violent media content are likely to get trapped in a mean world syndrome and start fearing of what is happening outside the world. The recent surge in violent activities on new media as well as on social media has created a sense of fear, especially among minority communities, as they have found themselves trapped in the mean world syndrome and have developed a sense of fear and insecurity despite the reality being otherwise. The mean world index basically comprises of three statements in general. The first one is the belief that most of the people are just looking out for themselves. The second assumption is that an individual cannot be too careful in dealing with such kind of people who are dangerous. The third assumption is that most of the people would take advantage whenever they will get a chance. Although the cultivation theory was formulated on the medium of television, but its applicability is similar to other forms of media. Also, and the theory has been incorporated in many other mediums of communication. The higher consumption of alcohol and violent lyrics in music videos also has a very higher effect on the younger generation, as the content in music videos is violent and there is a prevalence of violent lyrics, sexual violence where women are seen dancing naked, alcohol abuse, male dominance and abusive languages, and it has certainly affected the youth. Similar things happen with the violent content of the video games. Several studies have found a direct correlation with the violence in video games and children behavior, and the cultivation of theory has seen a direct effect on these games. The similar kind of cultivation effects were seen in the portrayal of women in a stereotypical manner, and viewers who are heavy users of media content regarding portrayal of women tend to have more sexist views on women. Criticism of cultivation analysis. The cultivation analysis research has focused more on effects instead of cause. It doesn't answer what is being influenced and who are being influenced. The cultivation theory also failed logically, consistency, and the theory has been criticized for methodological process employed and lack of conceptual approach. The theory also fails to answer the live experience, as it is evident that those who live in areas of higher crime rates are believed to have greater chances of being violent, which ultimately reduce the cultivation effect. Cultivation analysis also fails on account of cultural questions and has been criticized by the humanists for misinterpreting the field of cultural studies. The theory have been criticized for ignoring the claims of cultivation analysis are not useful in explaining the phenomenon, and also ignores notions of cognition and rational thinking. Conclusion. Although the theory of cultivation analysis has been one of the most discussed theories in communication research, but The process that the cultivation analysis follows takes several steps ranging from content analysis of media, asking questions regarding viewers' social realities, and then shifting to surveying the audiences, and finally to create and cultivation differential. Summing up this lecture, we hope in the process of cultivation hypothesis is proved. But the main problem with cultivation theory, as is the case with the whole effects tradition, is that there is several other factors responsible for behavioral changes apart from media content. So it becomes impossible to draw inferences just merely on the basis of media consumption without keeping other factors in mind. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. For more details, please read the text of this lecture properly and attempt the questions in the end. Thank you.